Hello friends, I am Sharad Doze, practicing chartered accountant for more than 38 years and also handling disability cases for more than 15 years. Now we have seen various reasons for the negligence on the part of a professional and leading to professional misconduct by the determination of professional misconduct by the institute. Today I am going to discuss the last cause or reason for the misconduct, which I have observed in many cases on the part of a professional. Whatever cases I have handled so far, only two cases I have fought against the chartered accountants on behalf of a company or a partnership firm, where I felt that the chartered accountant has, in real sense, cheated his client, and because of his negligence, clients have lost crores of rupees. I'll discuss these two cases. But the basic reason is recklessness in finalizing the audit, in issuing the certificates, or giving any statement knowingly that this is false just to achieve short term objective. Now, in one case which I fought against the chartered accountant, he was the auditor of a private company and having partnership. He's a partner in two firms, one XYZ and Co, another one ABC and Associates. The company appointed the company had appointed XYZ and Company chartered accountants as auditor. Say Mr. P, who is a partner in that XYZ and Company, issued a letter to the company saying that this year the audit will be performed by ABC and Associate and not XYZ and Company, disregarding the procedure prescribed by the Companies Act 1956. XYZ has not resigned it, nor the appointment of ABC and Company, ABC and Associate was proper. So the same chartered accountant, as if transferring the audit as a property to someone else and asking the other person to do the audit, this is sheer negligence, recklessness on his part. Not negligence, because everyone is aware about the basic concept of appointment of auditors. Not only that, when that ex Mr. P, partner of ABC and Associates, did the audit, in the list of sundry debtors, the name of, say, DEF Private Limited was included as on the balance sheet date of 31st March 2005, when DEF Private Limited was incorporated 2 months after the balance sheet, that is sometime in the month of May. That means as of 31st March, DEF Private Limited was not in existence at all, and it was shown as a creditor in the balance sheet of the company. And surprisingly, the DEF Private Limited is the company 100% owned by the same auditor. That means he himself has debited some expenses and created a liability in the books of that private company, showing that it is payable to him. Not only that, he was in loan syndication activity, or he was procuring deposits for that company, and he has given on his letterhead, I am repeating again, he has given on his letterhead as a chartered accountant that I have procured X amount of deposit for the company, therefore I am entitled to brokerage of rupees 5 lakhs, kindly make the payment as early as possible. So this is recklessness, presuming that the other party does not understand anything, or some sort of chalta hai attitude might have crept in his mind. In another example, which again I had come across, where I fought for a partnership firm against a chartered accountant, where he had made gross or grave mistakes for which the firm has suffered lakhs of rupees. To give some instances, the sales for March 2011 was recorded in the books of accounts for March 12. The sales for March 12 were recorded in the books for March 13. And when this was pointed out, he had replied to the institute that I have not done the audit. It has been done by my assistants. They have checked it and I have relied upon them. A simple question. If a person can rely upon audit assistants or article clerks, then there is a need for a chartered accountant to sign the accounts or to sign the balance sheet. But he has made such a bold statement. Not only that, he had stated that in his reply to the institute that it is recorded, it is sufficient. Whether 11 or 12, it should not make a difference. But there is a specific provision in SA 240, Standards of Auditing 240, para A4, which says that omitting or delaying a transaction being recorded is a fraud. This was not there. So even if it is recorded for 11th sale in the month in March 13 or 14, it doesn't make any difference so long as it is recorded. That is sufficient. Is it the case? In the same accounts, he has mentioned that he had done the test check. When it was pointed out to the institute, there were only 5 sale transactions in a year, first year of 11, and 7 sale transactions in the year 12. It was a land selling company. The question of test check does not arise. Even if in 5 or 7 transactions you require a test check, then what are you doing it? And the third part is still I couldn't understand while drafting a letter at that time, that the company was engaged in the business of purchasing a plot, subdividing into various smaller size plots and selling it. It was a business. So the partnership firm sold one such plot for rupees 60 lakh, whose stamp duty value was 120 lakhs. And therefore he passed the accounting entry in the books of accounts of the partnership firm for sale of 120 lakhs. Now here the accounting entry has to be for 60 lakhs. For income tax purposes, it will be considered as 120 lakhs under section 43CA of the Income Tax Act. But you can't change the account. The reality is 60 lakhs only. And he has shown 120 lakhs as sale. That means he had paid more income tax by the firm for that year. And in the next year, the concerned buyer is going to pay only 60 lakhs. That means in the next year, are you going to claim that 60 lakhs as bad debts? Now, what sort of accounting is done? This is sheer recklessness or chalta hai attitude, or no one understands it, some sort of misconduct that has crept into the accounts, for which I had fought out. However, rest of the 45-50 cases, whatever I have fought out on behalf of the chartered accountants only, because I find that in some case there are some genuine mistakes that have happened for which the concerned chartered accountant should not be punished heavily by the institute for improper or non-representation. I'll discuss few cases, 2-3 cases, same type permits, or even in the next lecture. One chartered accountant gave a certificate to a company. Company has purchased land by issuing shares to a director. That means the land was in the name of a director. It was brought in books of accounts, and instead of making payment to the concerned director, the company issued shares to him. The board resolution for allotment of shares was there, everything was there. But the document was not registered as required under Transfer of Property Act as well as Indian Registration Act. The document was not registered, there was no title to the company. The company had applied for subsidy from Ministry of Food Processing for the establishment of a warehouse, wherein they have shown that the land purchase was 35 crore as an investment made in it, and based upon that, they claim certain subsidy. Some disgruntled persons from that taluka level or a village level informed the ministry that the land was not in the name of the company. The ministry sought title search report from the company, and the company accepted that the land is not in the name of the company, but it is in the name of the directors. The cursed chartered accountant who has issued a certificate, obviously the committee has found him guilty and he was appropriately punished. The point, in my opinion, is when you are certifying that the property amount for a subsidy, it is incumbent on the part of a professional to ascertain whether the property at least stands in the name of the auditee or the name of the person seeking the certificate. Again, I feel that this is recklessness and nothing else. Another example, again, which is a unique one, I had never come across such a case, and frankly speaking, there was no scope for me to defend over there. An educational trust wanted to establish an engineering college and a medical college, for which it sought for a loan from a State Bank of India and Punjab National Bank in consortium. I am giving the specific dates. For 31st March 2010, up to that date, State Bank of India and PNB had disbursed 90 crore rupees as loan. But thereafter, some disputes have arisen between the trustees and the bank stopped further disbursement. So the trustees filed a civil suit for the recovery of damages, rupees 250 crores against State Bank and Punjab National Bank. So, as on the balance sheet date of 31st March 2010, loan was 90 crores on the liability side. As on 31st March 2011, there was no loan at all. The State Bank filed a complaint that our outstanding loan of 90 crores is not being disclosed or is not being shown in the balance sheet of a trust as on 31st March 2011, and we are not being repaid the entire loan. When inquired, when the person approached me, his partners told that the trustees have filed a suit for damages during the financial year 10-11 of 250 crores, which was adjusted against the loan amount of 90 crore, and 160 crore has been shown as recovery and receivable in the balance sheet on asset side. This is how the loan was directly adjusted against the receivable. Please note, this is just by filing a suit. No decision by district court was available. Even if the district court had given a decision, still we could have passed the accounting entry and the bank might have gone to the High Court, which we are not concerned. But just filing a suit with the district court, no entitlement is there on the part of a trust. That means that auditor have totally disregarded the accounting standard 9 as to the ascertainability or certainty of receiving the amount. In my opinion, this is sheer recklessness. Even the submission could not be made that the trustees have done the balance sheet, they have prepared the balance sheet, and auditor has audited it subsequent to preparation of balance sheet. But under Maharashtra Cooperative Societies, Maharashtra Charitable Trust Act, a balance sheet is to be prepared by the auditor and not by the trustees. So here also there was very little scope for defense on the part of a professional chartered accountant. Now, one more example which I come across, that in one case, company, a private limited company, received certain advances and back to back on the same day were paid to sister of the directors. Certainly, AS 18, a related party transaction, gets triggered, no reporting at all whatsoever in the audit as well as notes to accounts. One more aspect which I have come across as to the chalta hai attitude. When a chartered accountant receives audit from another chartered accountant, a communication is required to be made as per Clause 8, Schedule 1, Part 1 to the Chartered Accountants Act to the previous auditor and seek his, I'm not using the word NOC, but some sort of communication from him that whether there is any problem in accepting the audit. I have come across many cases where the new chartered accountant simply ignores that there is such provision in the statute, or he feels that concerned chartered accountant is a good friend of him or is known to him, so he should not have any objection, or he will not have any objection, therefore he does not communicate. Either way, there is a problem, there is a miscommunication, and the concerned person, new chartered accountant, has been held guilty on this count by the disciplinary committees. In the next session, I'll cover 2-3 such cases for negligence, recklessness on the part of chartered accountant, and I will suggest some remedies which can be easily followed, some solutions, something to be done by the institute also in this regard. Till then, thank you very much.